most about Donald Trump when we think about his first 100 days is not what he has done or has not done. It is his total hypocrisy. When Trump campaigned for president, he told the American people that he would be a different type of Republican. You all remember that? He said that he would stand up for the working class of this country. He put some really strong ads on television. He said he would take on the political and economic establishment. That's what he said during his campaign. Now, almost 100 days into his administration, let's see what he did as opposed to what he said. During his campaign, candidate Donald Trump said that he was going to drain the swamp. Drain the swamp. He said, and I quote, "We can't fix a rigged system by relying on the people who rigged it in the first place," end of quote. But during the first 100 days, Donald Trump has brought more billionaires into his administration than any president in history. In fact, his chief economic advisor is Gary Cohn, the former president of Goldman Sachs, a man who received a $285 million severance package from Goldman Sachs before accepting his appointment. As all of you will recall, Goldman Sachs paid a $5 billion fine to the federal government because of their illegal activities with regard to subprime mortgage loans. If draining the swamp means bringing more billionaires into your administration than any president in history, if it means bringing Goldman Sachs into your administration, then I really wonder what kind of swamp we are talking about. During the campaign, Donald Trump told the American people that he was going to provide health insurance for everybody, and that it would be, quote, much less expensive and much better, end of quote. That's what he said during the campaign, but that's not the type of legislation that he supported along with House Speaker Paul Ryan. The bill that he supported was a proposal which would have thrown 24 million Americans off of health insurance, substantially raised premiums for older workers, cut Medicaid by over $800 billion, and denied 2.5 million women their choice of medical coverage by defunding Planned Parenthood. Meanwhile, not too surprisingly, that very same proposal would have provided $300 billion in tax breaks to the top 2% and hundreds of billions more in tax breaks to insurance companies and drug companies. It also would have cut coverage for many of our people who are struggling today with the opioid epidemic. So here is the situation. He promises health care for everybody, supports legislation that would have thrown 24 million people off of health insurance. As a candidate, Donald Trump said that he understood the pain that working families across this country were feeling. Well, he's right. There is an enormous amount of pain on the part of people who are working longer hours for lower wages, on the part of people who cannot afford child care, who are worried to death about their kids, who cannot afford to go to college. But I have to tell President Trump that he is not responding to the pain of the American people when he proposes a budget that would do devastating harm to the working class of this country. Devastating. His budget that he has brought forth would throw over 1 million children off of after-school programs. You got millions of families where mom is working, dads are working. They want to know that their kids are in a safe, constructive activity after school. And Trump would throw over 1 million kids off of after-school programs. President Trump, you're not championing the needs of working families when your budget would kick 200,000 families out of their homes by cutting affordable housing. We've got a major crisis in this country in affordable housing. Millions of people spending 40, 50% of their incomes on housing. And your budget would throw 200,000 families out of their homes? That's not helping the working class of this country. Mr. President, you don't help working people when your budget would eliminate financial aid to more than 1.5 million college students. Our job is to make sure that kids can get into college, not make it harder for them to get the higher education they need. Mr. President, you're not a different kind of Republican when you propose a budget that would eliminate heating assistance to 6 million families by abolishing the LIHEAP program. Working families need help so they don't go cold in the wintertime. They need help so that they can afford air conditioning when the temperature becomes 100 or 105 degrees. Mr. President, you don't help working families by throwing more than 90,000 children off of Head Start, a program which has been enormously important in making sure that kids have a shot to do well in school. And while President Trump has proposed devastating cuts to after-school programs, to the Meals on Wheels programs, to Head Start, to all of these programs that help working families, there's something else that he has been fighting for in his first 100 days. And that is he has just introduced a one-page proposal on taxation, so-called tax reform, that would provide trillions of dollars in tax breaks to billionaires like himself and the most profitable corporations in this country. At a time of massive wealth inequality, when the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, if you can believe it, and it's true, President Trump wants to repeal the estate tax, a $353 billion tax giveaway to the wealthiest 0.2%. The only people who would benefit from that tax proposal are the top 0.2%. $353 billion in tax breaks to the very richest people in the country. At the same exact time, he wants to cut back on program after program that helps little children, helps senior citizens, helps college students, helps working families. Under Donald Trump's plan, the Walton family of Walmart, the wealthiest family in this country, would get a tax break of up to $53 billion. That's what happens when you repeal the estate tax. I want you to think about this. The wealthiest family in this country would get a tax break of up to $53 billion. The Koch brothers, the second wealthiest family in this country, a family that is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try to buy elections for candidates who will protect the interest of the wealthy and the powerful. The Koch brothers family would get a tax break of up to $34 billion. Sheldon Adelson's family, and Mr. Adelson contributed $5 million to the inaugural program of the president, would get a tax break of up to $12.6 billion. Oh, and by the way, just in passing, Donald Trump's own family would get a tax break of up to $4 billion. So here you have in one proposal, and when we talk about a rigged economy, my friends, this is what we are talking about. In one proposal, there are tax breaks that go to the top 0.2% exclusively. 99.8% of Americans would not get a nickel in tax breaks by the repeal of the estate tax. Furthermore, as part of Trump's tax proposals, tax plans for the future, And remember again, this is a guy who said, hey, I'm a different type of Republican. I'm going to stand with the working families of America. I'm going to take on the establishment. But at a time when 1 out of 5 large profitable corporations pays no federal income taxes at all, President Trump wants to provide a $600 billion tax holiday to companies that are stashing their cash in the Cayman Islands and other offshore tax havens. So I say to President Trump, no, we will not give even more tax breaks to millionaires and multi-billion-dollar corporations while children in America are going hungry and while veterans are sleeping out on the street. This is not a proposal that works for working families. This is a proposal exclusively for billionaires. During the campaign, as I think many of you will recall, Donald Trump promised that he would not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. But as president, he has filled his administration with politicians who have spent their entire political careers trying to slash these programs. Tom Price is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He has spent his entire political life trying to figure out ways to cut Medicare. Mick Mulvaney, President Trump's budget director, has been very public, he hasn't hidden it, about his desires to cut Social Security. In fact, he has referred to Social Security as a Ponzi scheme. During the campaign, Donald Trump said that the pharmaceutical industry is getting away with murder. Candidate Trump promised to allow Americans to purchase low-cost prescription drugs from Canada and other countries and to require Medicare to negotiate for lower-priced medicine. But as president, Trump has done absolutely nothing to lower the cost of prescription drug. Even worse, his nominee to head the Food and Drug Administration has received millions of dollars from big pharmaceutical companies and is strongly opposed to Trump's campaign pledges to lower drug prices. During his campaign for president, Donald Trump promised that he was going to stop Wall Street from getting away with murder. End of quote. He inserted language into the Republican Party platform to reinstate the Glass-Steagall Act to prevent Wall Street banks from gambling with the bank deposits of the American people. That's a good idea. But as president, we haven't heard Donald Trump say one word, not one word, about cracking down on the greed and recklessness on Wall Street. In fact, Donald Trump recently signed an executive order that would begin to deregulate the exact same financial institutions whose illegal behavior caused millions of Americans to lose their homes, jobs, and life savings 9 years ago. In fact, he's doing exactly what Wall Street wanted him to do. He's not standing up to Wall Street. He is doing what Wall Street wanted him to do. Candidate Donald Trump promised that he would fight for policies that would buy American and hire American. We all remember that. But his own businesses still manufacture ties in China, clothing in Mexico, furniture in Turkey, picture frames in India, and shirts in Bangladesh, where workers are paid just 30 cents an hour. So how do you talk about buy American, hire American, and still continue as a businessman to manufacture a lot of his products abroad? So I say to President Trump, lead by example. Don't just give us speeches, you know. If you want to tell corporate America to reinvest in this country, maybe, just maybe, you might want to bring your own plants back to the United States. Now, there is an area where President Trump's position has not changed, and I have to admit that. During the campaign, tragically, candidate Trump said that climate change was a hoax. Climate change was a hoax. That is what Donald Trump said. At a time when virtually the entire scientific community understands that climate change is real, is caused by human activity, and is already causing devastating harm throughout this planet, Trump maintains his absurd position and has appointed people who agrees with him that climate change is a hoax. Further, what President Trump is also doing in a way that is unprecedented in modern American history is trying to divide us up by race, by religion, by national origin, by our agenda, and by our sexual orientation. A good president, conservative presidents, progressive presidents, understand that one of their main jobs is to bring people together. Over the past 100 days, this president seems to be doing everything that he can to divide us up, to turn one group of Americans against another group of Americans. He wants us to live in fear and to live with hatred, not to live with love and respect. Now, if there is a silver lining in the past 100 days, it is this. It is that the American people are beginning to understand that when they stand together, when they fight back, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. When Donald Trump and Paul Ryan came up with their disastrous health care plan to throw 24 million Americans off of health insurance, the American people fought back, and that plan was defeated. In my view, our job is not just to prevent the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, it is to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system, guarantee health care to all people as a right. That's what the rest of the industrialized world does. That's what we should be doing. Just the other day, along with 20 other senators, I introduced legislation that would finally allow working people in this country to have a living wage, $15 an hour. We've got to raise the minimum wage. We have got to bring forth an infrastructure plan that puts 15 million people back to work and rebuilds our crumbling roads and bridges. We've got to continue the fight to make public colleges and universities tuition free and have a Wall Street speculation tax pay for that. We need to join almost every country on earth, rich or poor, in making sure that working families have paid family and medical leave. And there is legislation that has been introduced providing 12 weeks of guaranteed paid and family leave. We have got to take on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry by lowering the outrageous cost of prescription drugs. People are dying today because they cannot afford the high prices that the drug companies are paying. We have got to expand Social Security, not cut Social Security. We need comprehensive immigration reform to provide a path towards citizenship, not scapegoating the undocumented. We need real criminal justice reform by ending the mass incarceration of African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans. We've got to invest in our young people, not in jails and incarcerations. We've got to make sure that the wealthy and the large corporations not only do not get huge tax breaks, but that they begin to pay their fair share of taxes. There is an enormous amount of work to be done, and I have just touched on some of the issues. So let us stand together. Let us go forward. Let us demand a government that represents all of us and not just the 1%. Now is not the time for despair. Now is not the time for giving up. Now is the time for fighting back. Thank you all very much.